Hello, Peeps. Come and peep in the past.
Warrington, Peeps in the Past, our heritage, looks briefly at our prehistoric ancestors and the ancient town on the ford. How the town's industry developed and prospered during the Industrial Revolution. The first electric trams in Bridge Street. Royal visits 1913, 1938 and 1945. Warrington's early walking days. Coronation Day preparations of 1937. Were you one of the boys or girls who carried a flag, or did you have a biff bat? Warrington Rugby Club, The Wire. How the club was formed in 1897. Hear the George Formby story and witness again the event that saw the 120,000 people who took George's last curtain as his funeral cortege passed through the town. Their Royal Highnesses Prince Charles and Princess Diana visit Golden Square on May the 30th, 1984 for the grand opening. Were you there? See all this and much, much more when you peep in the past. Warrington Peeps in the Past, 1940s to 1960. See Warrington preparing for war and what effects it would have. The building of the Ritz Cinema, now Mr. Smith's. How Buttermarket Street looked in 1940 and the buses and cars. And after the war, thousands of jubilant Warringtonians. The luxury Grand Cinema. The building of Wilderspool Causeway before and after. Were you there for the opening ceremony? Queen Elizabeth's coronation celebration in 1953. Policemen directing traffic. There were no traffic lights then. Turn the clock back. Indulge in how we were when you peep in the past. Warrington Peeps in the Past, 1960s to 1980. Step back in time to visit once again the cinemas of Warrington, the Queen's, the Pavilion, the Ritz and others. See the elephants in the streets of Warrington as Billy Smart's circus comes to town. Can you remember when Warrington first got traffic lights? Or even driving along Sankey Street, what were the shops called? Walk around the old market hall and meet again the warm, friendly people who worked there. The Queen's Jubilee in 1977. Were you there? How did Golden Square used to look? Did they really move the Academy by winching it? These videos are available from all leading video stockists, or send a cheque for £12.99 for each video, include your name and address, and receive the video post-free. You'll also receive details of videos available in this series. Warrington is one of the principal thoroughfares of the north, the entrance from southern England to all northwestern parts of the country. For 3,500 years, the Mersey has posed a formidable barrier, a boundary that keeps the locality of Warrington divided into two parts, situated upon its north and south banks. During the last 2 centuries, Warrington's road traffic problems have been multiplied by the construction of canals and railways. But no greater obstruction to the free flow of road traffic was ever created than when the Manchester Ship Canal arrived, just over 100 years ago. The 35.5-mile waterway sliced its way across the South Lancashire countryside like a huge medieval moat. The Ship Canal's designers could not have foreseen how great the increase in road use would become. The ensuing years saw road traffic continue to multiply at a frightening level. Traffic on the canal also increased, growing from 1 million tonnes a year in 1894 to 18.5 million tonnes during the waterway's heydays of 1959. Before the 18th century, the main transporters of goods were pack horses. These were superseded in the 1750s by carriers' carts, and then as turnpike roads improved by passenger-bearing stagecoaches and mail coaches. Privately owned horse trams preceded the first public transport in 1902. Within a few years, the electric tramcar came along, and for the fare of 1 penny, passengers could ride on any of the 5 electric tramway routes. Trams in Warrington lasted for only 20 years. The fleet of 21 double-decker vehicles was replaced by motor buses. The original tram route from Warrington to Latchford was the last one to close in August 1935. For many years, the short-sighted planning of the borough's road systems caused Warrington to become increasingly plagued by traffic congestion. And in 1950, a traffic advisory committee was formed to help solve the problems. By August 1955, work had begun to uncork the bottleneck at Wilderspool, where stood the old level crossing gates, a familiar and frustrating sight for the many drivers who'd been held up by them. The work on Wilderspool Bridge was completed in less than 2 years, helping to alleviate one of the town's major traffic problems. By September 1959, the construction of a network of motorways had commenced. Plans were being made for the M6, the motorway which would join Lancashire and the north of England with the M1 beyond Birmingham. But there were a number of obstacles which stood in its way at Warrington. A bridge of considerable height and length was to be constructed 1 mile east of the sleepy village of Thelwall to carry the motorway over the railway, the Bridgewater Canal, the A56 to Lymm, a minor road to Statham, the Manchester Ship Canal, the River Mersey and the A57 to Manchester. Work began in the fields on the north side of the Lymm Road, preparing the ground for the massive earthworks to be erected there. Wooden moulds were put in place in readiness for shaping the pre-stressed concrete, of which the bridge would be built. Stress-relieved wire supplied by the local wire industry is being used together with reinforcing rods. These are fabricated into tubes to provide the shape for the pillars, which are ultimately to carry the road high over the countryside. The pillars vary in thickness from 6 feet to 12 feet. One of the largest cranes in Britain at that time, with a jib height of almost 200 feet, is being used to lower 150-foot cylinder piles into pre-drilled holes. These concrete piles have a diameter of 3 feet with walls 5 inches thick and are being driven firmly into the ground using a 10-ton steam hammer. A total of 1,600 piles have to be driven along the 1¼ miles of the works. By June 1961, the line of the bridge had begun to take shape. In the neighbouring town of Runcorn, the townsfolk were about to unveil their new showpiece. The slow and outdated method of getting vehicles and people across the River Mersey between Widnes and Runcorn was about to be eclipsed with the opening of Runcorn Bridge. The £3 million river crossing, which had taken 5 years to complete, was opened by Her Royal Highness Princess Alexandra on Friday the 21st of July 1961. The Victorian Transporter Bridge was closed down the following day and later dismantled. Towards the end of 1962, cranes were in position to assemble the remaining spans over the Ship Canal section of the Thelwall Viaduct. Surfacing of the main bridge was well on the way to completion. The carriageway was covered with a 3-inch layer of hot-rolled asphalt laid over a damp-proof membrane. The final span was to be in 3 sections, the girders being from 10 to 20 feet deep. Spidermen worked 100 feet above the canal, protected in places by safety nets slung under the bridge. A clear passage for shipping had to be kept at all times. Ships built for canal traffic have short masts to allow them to pass under the many bridges on their route. The final pier spans were each 180 feet long, with a centre span of 336 feet. After almost 4 years of work, the Thelwall Viaduct was completed. In July 1963, the motorway was opened from Preston to Thelwall. For the first time, the beautiful lines which had been approved by the Fine Arts Commission could be appreciated. In the autumn of 1963, the remaining section of motorway to Staffordshire was opened. The viaduct cost £5.5 million to build and was the costliest single item on the 78-mile stretch of motorway then under construction. While the motorway network continued to develop, reshaping the landscape that it tore across, major changes were happening in the town of Warrington. Borough planners and developers brought under the hammer many of the old shops and other buildings that stood in the way of progress and the new Warrington. By 1974, the old market hall, which was first opened to the public in 1856, had closed, and its business transferred to the new site, which stands behind Bridge Street to the east. At a cost of £1.5 million, the new market has been thoughtfully linked to a multi-storey car park with a covered pedestrian bridge. Although the new market is clean, bright and warm, the old market will be remembered with nostalgia as a bustling hive of activity. Warrington's changing face continued throughout the 70s. Bold Street Methodist Church was demolished and rebuilt on its original site. These old shops, typical of a time gone by, will soon be laid flat. An impressive new office block was opened in 1976, Newtown House, at the corner of Buttermarket Street and Scotland Road. Here are to be found the district offices of the North West Water Authority and also the offices of the Warrington Newtown Development Corporation. This was Golborne Street before it became the Inner Ring Road. All the buildings on this street were demolished to make way for the new car park, including the Salem Baptist Church, which was rebuilt on Arpley Street. This side of Lee Street survived the bulldozer's shovel, leaving the public baths, which continues to serve the townsfolk to the present day. The east side of the street was a different story. Its buildings, including Regent Street, were demolished, the area becoming the entrance to the site of the town's Lee Street car park. By 1976, the town had undergone much change. The once bustling Sankey Street had become pedestrianised. New shops along its north side had replaced the old. Other developments were forging ahead. The new road from Sankey Street to Horsemarket Street, which it meets with the junction of Busey Street, follows the general line of Golborne Street and Queen Street, where stood the wholesale fruit and vegetable part of the old market. The new bus station and the major store in the second phase of the town centre shopping development occupy the site of the old retail market, which was demolished in 1974 when the new market was opened. In 1976, as the first stage of the shopping development was nearing completion, the second stage had started at the Sankey Street end of the Ring Road. Following the sweeping line of the road, 15 shop units were to face inwards onto a shopping mall with an impressive curved roof, whilst on the opposite side of the mall were to be a further 18 shop units. On the Ring Road opposite the car park, to which it was to be connected by a bridge and with direct access to the mall, the new bus station was taking shape. To be opened in 1979, this was to be an imposing building of steel and glass, with 19 departure standings at road level, and above them a waiting area, shop, cafe, staff canteen and toilets. This would replace the makeshift bus terminal at Arpley, which prior to being used by St Helens, Ribble and Crossville buses, had been a passenger train station forecourt and yard. There has been little, if any, change to the new bus station since its operational opening on the 11th of November 1979. Although changes were made to the management of the borough transport on April the 30th, 1986, as a result of the government's Transport Act of 1985 aimed at the deregulation of the bus network. Public transport services have been in the care of Warrington Borough Council for 84 years. This responsibility was to pass to a new company called Warrington Borough Transport Limited. Although still owned by the council, the new company will be managed by a separate board of directors. The Ritz Cinema, which once hid the old Arpley Street bus station, became Mr. Smith's nightclub in 1986. The potholed bus park and the shed, which was the canteen and rest facility for drivers and conductors, has given way to Warrington Slate Company, a family business first established in Bold Street in 1882, and a small car park. By 1984, road widening at Bridge Foot in preparation for the new bridge was complete. Also near to completion after its move was the Academy. It was found, after it had been pulled to its new site, that the building was in such a state of disrepair it almost required rebuilding. When the extensive renovation to the old Academy has been carried out and the new extension complete, the final move in this development can take place. On Thursday the 4th of October 1984, the statue of Oliver Cromwell returns, after a break of 4 years, to be erected on the south side of the restored and extended Academy, facing the River Mersey, and only 40 feet from its original site, where it had stood since 1899, facing Bridge Street. The delivery of the Academy's guardian was complete. Two well-known Warrington manufacturing companies, the town's cotton and wire industries, saw their factories disappear during the early 1980s. Opposite St Elphin's, Warrington Parish Church, Rylands Brothers Limited, who are manufacturers of coppered, galvanised and tinned wires, also nails and staples, had all but disappeared by October 1983. Only the firm's old office block stood on Church Street. The western boundary was this boarded-up cottage, and the eastern boundary is the car park and buildings into which Bent's Ironmongers moved from Upper Bank Street. By May 1984, hoardings hid most of the site of the old Bertella Grammar School. The school, founded in 1526 and deserted by education departments in 1940, had become home to Warrington Corporation Highways Department. Land surrounding the school was being cleared to make way for a newcomer to the town. The final stages of the new development were evident by January 1985. A petrol station stands in front of the old school. Sainsbury's supermarket opened the following month, on February the 19th, and new traffic lights had been installed at the junction of Church Street, Manchester Road and School Brow. Not only are Sainsbury's offering more than 8,000 lines at low supermarket prices, the petrol station is also giving a good deal to the Warrington motorist, as petrol elsewhere is £1.96 per gallon. Alongside the petrol station is the car park with enough space for 550 vehicles. The store, which has a sales floor area of 27,000 square feet, will be open 6 days a week. Sainsbury's were originally established in London in 1869. The opening of this latest store brings their total number of supermarkets to 252. The new store, said 33-year-old manager Ian Parker, has 24 twin-bay checkouts and a sophisticated computerized replenishment system. During the construction of Sainsbury's, the old Cockhedge Mill was under demolition. Cotton mills all over the country were closing down, and town planners frowned on heavy industry close to a town centre. Warrington was home to as many as 16 cotton mills, but the import of cheap foreign textiles forced the industry's demise. The Cockhedge was the last Warrington mill to close in 1962. Area from Newtown House to the Salvation Army Hostel and north to Central Station was under the bulldozers in January 1984. Houses as well as industrial buildings from Tilley Street to Cockhedge Lane were cleared. By May, Orford Street and Crown Street were closed to through traffic and the steel skeletons were growing. New town developments had by now caused an increasing effect on the shape and business of Warrington town. The growing number of vehicles was beginning to take its toll on the borough's road system. Since March 1974, the River Mersey crossing at Bridgefoot has imposed a weight limit of 9 tonnes on its users. The constant pounding of heavy traffic has caused structural faults to the bridge. Plans to build a second bridge are due to begin in July 1985. Desperate measures are also needed to reduce the traffic congestion on the Thelwall Viaduct. Built less than 15 years ago, the viaduct is now carrying 85,000 vehicles a day and is described as being at the limit of its capacity. This sign could well sum up the feelings of motorists. Sewer replacement work costing the town's ratepayers £930,000 has begun at the junction of Church Street and Buttermarket Street. Motorists who for several years had experienced delays entering the town from the south now find it equally difficult to leave. Traffic entering from the north was diverted into Haydock Street and Lithgow's Lane, while similar work was taking place in Winnick Street. Buildings being erected on the Cockhedge site were nearing completion, and by November 1984, the new Associated Dairies store was opened, shortly to be followed by Halfords. Steelwork, salvaged from the old mill, has helped preserve the Cockhedge name. On December the 23rd, 1900, the first supply of electricity went out of the Howley power station. In 1946, the final extension had begun. It included a subway under Knutsford Road and a bridge over the Mersey. Conveyor belts brought the coal direct from the railway. With bigger and better generating stations and the national grid, Howley became redundant. The building was demolished and the site cleared. This concrete stump is an indication of where the bridge once stood. Growing evidence of the increase in unemployment is expressed in the town's newspaper. Headline news on Friday the 14th of June 1985 spelled out the grim prospect facing the locality's 2,800 school leavers this summer. Of the previous year's 2,815 youngsters who left school in summer, only 270 had found jobs by October of '84. Warrington's Senior Careers Officer, Mrs. Julie Summers, said she hoped Warrington's boom in retail stores will provide jobs for school leavers. Looking across the river towards Mersey Street, the wharf, once a hive of activity with barges being unloaded, is now derelict. Mersey Street, which connects Manchester Road to Bridgefoot, is narrow with industrial buildings and small businesses on either side. A typical Lancashire small business, now abandoned, is Gandy's Clog Shop at the corner of Rose and Crown Street. Warrington's last clogger, a part of the town's history. The clatter of wooden soles on the cobblestones and the sparks from the clog irons were indications of the traditional footwear in northern towns in the earlier part of this century. Bridgefoot site clearance dictates that the prominent public toilets must go, but another landmark is to be retained. the king of public telephone kiosks, with built-in letterbox and stamp machine, one of only 4 remaining examples. Traffic at Bridgefoot is chaotic, with 3,000 to 4,000 vehicle movements per hour. The answer? A £1.25 million scheme for a second bridge. The contract to include approach roads and landscaping has been awarded to Balfour Beatty Construction Limited of Bramhall, Cheshire, with a completion date of December 1986. On the Knutsford side of the river, work commenced in July 1985. Giant piles, 4 foot in diameter, were sunk into the south bank to provide the foundation for the bridge supports. The new bridge will be built just east of the existing Warrington Bridge, where it will carry traffic in one direction, south, as part of an immense traffic roundabout. The bridge will span the river from Knutsford Road to Mersey Street at a point where it's over 100 feet wide. The deck of the bridge is supported on 10 massive steel beams, each weighing 26 tons and measuring 125 feet long by 4 foot 6 inches deep. The giant cross-river beams, brought to Warrington by road from South Wales, were swung directly from the lorry into place on the bridge piers, all positioned by mid-December, 6 months ahead of schedule. The reinforced concrete panels, which form the base for the roadway, can be positioned ready to receive their covering of concrete. When complete, the roadway will be 68 feet wide, providing for 5 lanes of traffic. The bridge itself will have cost £900,000. The concrete for the decking is pumped through a long delivery pipe to the centre of the bridge, directly from the lorries on the riverbank. While work on the bridge proceeds, the approach roads on the south side are being completed. The large roundabout at the junction of Knutsford Road and Wilderspool Causeway has given way to temporary islands, marked out by the inevitable traffic cones, which together with the contractor's machinery and vehicles blocking the carriageway, have become a nightmare for drivers. 1986 was to be an eventful year for Warrington, a town long renowned for its pageantry. On Sunday the 4th of May, a crowd of 2,000 enjoyed the first festival regatta at Howley in true festival tradition. Activities the following week involved the Royal Marines, who unfortunately had to drop their parachute routines at Victoria Park due to gusting winds. The Marines were part of the show at the Steam and Vintage gathering. The event provided the ideal alternative day out on Cup final weekend to the Wembley spectacle. The 10,000 or so who chose to miss the football and brave the showers had much to get steamed up about. The cast list was distinguished. There were more than 30 venerable examples of the heavy steam traction and road rollers, and many vintage cars, also a host of commercial vehicles and bikes. Mr. Brian Lawrence, main organiser, said the gathering was a complete success. Crowds have gathered at Market Gate to cheer on more than 700 entrants for the Golden Square Half Marathon on Thursday, May the 22nd. Part of the Warrington Festival, the event is being co-sponsored by Haydock Commercials and Legal & General, who are the property owners of Golden Square.
All runners, please stay on the pavement till invited forwards. If you're spectating, please stay on the pavements and move down either side, please. Thank you.
The mass start at Market Gate took the marathon men and ladies down Buttermarket Street past the town's longest surviving cinema, the Odeon, which in a few years' time will be demolished and replaced by Yates Wine Bar. The first past the finishing post was Neil Rimmer of Sale Harriers, who completed the race in 1 hour, 7 minutes and 28 seconds. The women's winner was Alison Shepherd of Frodsham Harriers, whose finish time was 1 hour, 23 minutes and 16 seconds. In the biggest international sporting spectacle ever seen, up to 30 million people are taking part in sponsored athletics events to aid famine relief in Africa. The effort involved people from as far afield as Iceland and New Zealand, all sharing the same starting pistol, the arrival at the United Nations headquarters in New York of the flame that was lit 10 days ago in Sudan. On the ramp outside the General Assembly, Omar Khalifa lit the flame that set the whole world running. In Hyde Park, London, Bob Geldof would give the sign to start them running. At Victoria Park on Sunday, May the 25th, 1986, 200 athletes, runners and gentle joggers converged to join the race against time for Africa. At 4 p.m, under starters' orders, the voice of Bob Geldof in London and the starting pistol in Victoria Park now meant that up to 30 million people worldwide had begun to run for Sport Aid's Run the World campaign.
Change the world!
The enthusiasm of the Warrington athletes almost put an end to the rest of this film, as they sent the cameraman, Paul Walker of Warrington, crashing to the ground. People from all over the town answered Geldof's fundraising battle cry by running the 6-mile course. Women from JAG, the Birchwood-based pop mobility team, had spent the earlier part of the day engaged in a marathon popping session, where JAG organiser Jill Henderson collected £1 from each participant to go towards the Sport Aid charity. Across the other side of the world, in Brisbane, Australia, runners had set off at 2 in the morning. Shops had been asked to leave all their lights on so the athletes could see where they were going as they ran through the night. It's hoped the worldwide event will raise £100 million for relief in Africa. It seems the people of Warrington never tire of running, walking, or taking part in some spectacle or other. Grey, sombre skies greet 6,000 walkers and 5 times as many spectators as Warrington's Walking Day unifies every facet of Christian faith in this unique act of witness. Banners and flags flutter lazily in the gentle, warm breeze as the air is filled with booming drums and brass on Friday, July the 4th, in a tradition that's believed to date back to the 1830s. 32 churches from all over the borough are represented here on the Town Hall lawn to take part in an occasion where no one is left out. Local hospital radio is here to broadcast live for the next 3 hours to the town's sick and injured in hospital, estimated to be around 1,000 in total.
And would you like to say happy walking day to all the patients in the hospital who are listening to us?
Happy birthday to all the patients in the hospital.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're the most beautiful rose queen I've ever seen. Thank you, Lindsay. And back to Alan.
In keeping with tradition, Warrington Parish church members are first to step out into Sankey Street past the podium where the Mayor, Councillor Ted Bowden, and the Mayoress, Mrs Sheila Bold, wave them on their way. Each participating church has completed a questionnaire on behalf of Hospital Radio, which revealed, amongst other things, that the oldest person on the walk was Mr Claude Hughes, a retired bandmaster who walked with the Salvation Army. The 2 clerics who've travelled furthest for the event are Father John Didman, a Nigerian Roman Catholic priest currently visiting St Benedict's Orford, and the Reverend Robert Bunch from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, USA, in Britain as part of an exchange with the Reverend G.E. Dobson of Bold Street Methodist Mission. Mr Bunch said he would never forget the occasion that has brought together all the Christian family. The day is a triumph of organisation for the police and borough council. Dozens of officers closed town centre roads from early on, keeping through traffic on the move and the streets clear for both walkers and spectators. The council did not repeat the slip-up of last year, which saw the town's main car parks closed, causing motorists much frustrated anger. As the event drew to a close, colourful Pastor John Pennington, possibly one of the best-known ministers in the North, particularly for his weekend placard-bearing appearances outside every rugby league and soccer ground in the area, said, "Walking Day is not the same as it was. Don't get me wrong, it's a grand act of witness, but these days it's also an excuse for a big booze-up. Another thing I feel is wrong are all these blaring bugles and jazz-type bands. Where have all the rousing hymns and the best brass bands gone?"
You good lads. Come out now. Come out of there. Get it on, lads. Come away. Green old Whitley will get
you. Stockton Heath villagers were out in force to celebrate their annual Walking Day the week after the town centre event. Despite the threat of rain and grey skies, thousands of villagers donned their summer finery to line the streets and enjoy the sights and sounds of this splendid occasion. The community has come together for its yearly celebration, with the church's youth organisations and bands walking as one, the enthusiastic spectators cheering them as they went past. The bands helping to give the Walking Day its special carnival atmosphere include the Salvation Army Band, the Warrington Pipe Band, and the local Boys Brigade and Guide bands. I wonder if Pastor John Pennington is among the crowds enjoying the rousing hymns and brass sounds. St Thomas's Rose Queen is Victoria Findlay. Emma Ward is Hillcliffe Baptist Church's Rose Queen, and St Mary Magdalene's Church, Appleton, has chosen Andrea Woods for their Rose Queen 1986. The Reverend Tom Kenny, who's the new vicar at St Thomas's Church, Stockton Heath, said it was his first taste of Walking Day and therefore an extra special occasion. The work on the new bridge is nearing completion. The pavements on either side have to be erected. These are separate steel and concrete structures cantilevered out from the sides of the bridge. Thanks to the mild winter and the contractor's ability to phase the work efficiently, the bridge was completed 6 months ahead of schedule. On the 25th of July 1986, traffic is still congested, but not for long. The new bridge is ready for its official opening. The Mayor of Warrington, Councillor Ted Bowden, accompanied by Councillor Mrs Melrose, Chairman of Cheshire County Council, performs the ceremony. As the new bridge was declared open, more than 30 years of delay and demands for action on Warrington traffic chaos came to an end. About 40,000 vehicles a day will now use the bridge to cross the town, and the planners hope it will solve the problem of peak hour tailbacks on approach roads. They're sometimes more than a mile long. The new bridge is the 7th in 700 years to span the Mersey at Warrington. Some of its predecessors lasted only a few decades. Others, like this one, constructed by the Earl of Derby, played an important role in the Civil War. When George V opened the existing Warrington Bridge in 1913, it was considered good enough to last many lifetimes, but the builders reckoned without today's volume of traffic. Demands for a second bridge began back in the 1950s. The new bridge is part of a major reorganisation of traffic flow in Warrington, but the relief from jams will be short-lived. Work will begin in September on strengthening the old bridge over the Mersey, so it will be another 12 to 18 months before drivers feel the full benefit of the new bridge. History was also made at Wembley on April the 25th, 1987. And no doubt a lot of memories too, when Warrington Town Football Club met St Helens Town beneath the famous Twin Towers in the final of the FA Challenge Vase competition. St Helens got the first goal from O'Neill with a left foot cross to Leahy, who headed the ball into the back of the net. Leahy was the maker of St Helens' second goal, beating off Warrington opponents to find Brian Rigby on the penalty spot, who in an almost repeat of the first goal found the back of the net from a header, taking St Helens 2 goals clear after 8 minutes of play. For the rest of the first half, St Helens left Warrington breathless. Warrington were back in the game in the second half as Ian Reid scored from a free kick taken by Derek Brownbill. Phil Leahy scored his second goal of the match, making it 3-1. With 6 minutes left to play, Warrington's Neil Cook scored. But an opportunity to bring things level was thrown away by Hughes, who headed the ball wide. The result?
Whistle blows, and St Helens have won the 1987 FA Vase at their first attempt. They've beaten Warrington Town in a superb game of football at Wembley by 3 goals to 2. There we are, have it on the scoreboard. Phil Leahy 2 and Brian Rigby for the winners. And here come the winners. Tommy O'Neill, with that precious FA Vase in his hand, comes down the Wembley steps. They're the happy fans.
Television news crews from all over the country descended upon the lanes and farmers' fields that surround Risley Remand Centre in May 1989. A handful of prisoners had climbed onto the roof of the prison and went on a wrecking spree. It was alleged that 50 inmates became involved after attempts to overpower prison guards in an effort to break out went wrong. The 4-day orgy of destruction landed ratepayers with a bill of more than £1 million. Hundreds of firemen from Cheshire, Merseyside and Greater Manchester were called to tackle a blaze which broke out in the early hours of Tuesday the 9th of May 1989 at the giant Sanyo warehouse in Risley. A massive relay of hoses was organised to bring water from the nearby United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority site. Mr. Gary Brewer, a security man, was the only person on site when the fire began. He raised the alarm, and a few minutes later the first of 25 fire engines arrived from 3 brigades. Fire hydrants are plentiful around the area, but such was the extent of the blaze that firemen were forced to drain 2 nearby ponds to replenish water supplies. Breathing apparatus needed to be worn by 14 firemen who searched the premises while controlling the blaze at ground level. 3 hydraulic platforms were used by firefighters to battle with the flames from above. Police had to close 2 slip roads leading to the nearby M62, which resulted in tailbacks for early morning commuters who saw the giant black plumes of smoke from as far as 10 miles away. Almost all of Sanyo's entire stockholding was destroyed by the fire. Business equipment, including high-quality computers, videos, camcorders and audio products were stored at the Melbury Court warehouse. Television and microphone stock were also lost. Fire crews were still damping down the fire 36 hours later. Damage is estimated to be in the region of £20 million. In an effort to bring relief to the area's roads, work on the M6 at Thelwall was finally started in January 1993. The successful bidder for the tender is Tarmac Construction, which has come in with a figure of £52.5 million for the road improvement scheme. A number of options had been considered by the Department of Transport. Repairing and widening the old bridge, demolishing it and starting again, or building an additional bridge were only a few of the choices. The preferred scheme of building an additional bridge beside the existing viaduct had won approval from the Secretary of State for Transport and the Environment in August 1990. £24 million is for the new viaduct and the widening of the M6 motorway. Road designers of the 50s and 60s could hardly have imagined the volume of traffic which this section of motorway now carries, frequently in excess of 120,000 vehicles per day. For further evidence of the changing times, you only need to look at the price of the original viaduct, a snip at £5.5 million. One of the main failings of the old bridge was that while it had 3 lanes running in each direction, there was no hard shoulder, so any breakdown or accident could cause major delays. One of the most challenging aspects of building the new bridge was the crossing of the ship canal. The span length of this section of the structure is 71 metres, with a clearance above the canal of 23 metres. There are a total of 603 bored piles in the new structure, the average depth of which is 28 metres. 100,000 tonnes of structural concrete and 10,000 tonnes of structural steel have been used, along with the 9,000 tonnes of reinforcing steel. Surfacing the viaduct required 13,000 tonnes of asphalt. One of the main features of the new viaduct is that it has only 2 expansion joints, one at either end, to take a movement of up to 600 millimetres. The Highways Agency believes that at a total length of 1,400 metres, the new Thelwall Viaduct is the largest structure of its kind in the world. The new viaduct was opened in April 1995, allowing traffic to switch from the old bridge to allow the £27 million renovation contract to begin. When all the work is completed, the twin bridges will bring much relief to the 120,000 motorists who daily use the Thelwall stretch of the M6. The refurbished viaduct, along with the new one, will be in service for 120 years, said the Highways Agency. Almost at the same time the Thelwall Viaduct was opened, work began on the construction of Phase 3 of Warrington's Southern Expressway. The scheme, costing £14 million, is the third and final stage of the road, which is to run east-west across the northern edge of the town centre, adjacent to the Liverpool to Manchester Railway. The expressway will help alleviate traffic congestion in the town centre and at the Bridgefoot Gyratory, which together with landscaping measures along the full length of the scheme will improve the area for Warrington town centre users. Froghall Bridge, which carries the expressway over the West Coast Mainline Railway, had to be widened during an earlier phase of the scheme. In this phase, the original portion of the arch has been strengthened by means of an in-situ reinforced concrete overslab supported by piled foundations. Froghall Lane was closed to eastbound traffic from October 1995 to enable work on the bridge to be carried out. The 1.2-kilometre single-lane carriageway, which is generally 10 metres wide, was completed on the 13th of November 1996. Bridge building has a long tradition with Warrington, dating back to the Bronze Age. Today, as we approach the 21st century, a new bridge is needed in Warrington. A bridge that will help resolve the problems and heal the scars of the past. Words that were included in a message delivered by Dr. Marjorie Molan, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, on May the 22nd, 1998. Dr. Molan has come to Warrington to unveil a sign for peace, which will mark the site of the proposed £1 million Warrington International Peace Centre.
Thank you very much.
The unveiling almost took place by itself in the gusting wind.
Is it off? Okay. I'm going to officially open it now. We'll do the work in a minute.
£1 million is needed to fund the building of the Peace Centre, which will provide a fitting memorial to Tim Parry and Jonathan Ball, who were killed in the Warrington bomb 5 years ago. A building that offers young people in Warrington and Northern Ireland the opportunity to meet and understand one another better. Before leaving, Dr. Molam told the crowd how delighted she was to be able to announce that already over £500,000 had been raised by the Tim Parry Jonathan Ball Trust in the first 8 weeks.
Thank you, bye. Goodbye, everybody.
Hello, is that Mr. Harrison? It is. It's a call here from the Warrington Guardian. I'm just ringing to see...
A new initiative by the Warrington Guardian means that people living in the locality can receive and pay for the newspaper without even leaving their home. The scheme, known as Direct Delivery Service, involves a network of distributors and collectors. Those wishing to enjoy this new service are first logged on to the Guardian's computer database. When all the details have been inputted by the operator, a letter is sent to the customer to confirm their order. As an additional incentive to join the scheme, readers will receive the first 8 weeks at half price. The service is specially designed for Guardian readers with no additional delivery cost. Just the price of the paper, together with the convenience of having their weekly payments collected at the door.
I'm from the Warrington Guardian. I've come for the paper money.
Right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
The passing of time has brought continuing change to this great northern industrial town. But there is one small part of Warrington that has managed to retain much of its rustic charm. At the end of the village of Thelwall, the ancient is vividly contrasted with the new. Farms and fields are broken by the giant bulk of the Thelwall Viaduct. But at the end of a narrow leafy lane close to the village inn is perhaps one of the most interesting attributes of Thelwall: the ancient ferry, operative since 1894. The history of the ferry is a fascinating one, mainly because of the fact that it's not been open to great change. Its working is governed by an ancient Act of Parliament. Tolls, for instance, remained at 1 penny a trip across the 100-yard stretch of the Manchester Ship Canal for more than 80 years. Economically, the ferry falls far short of paying its way. But nevertheless, the general feeling of residents in the area is that it should remain. In 1959, running costs amounted to £1,200, plus the maintenance of landing stages. Yet receipts amounted to approximately £36 annually, brought in by the 16 or so persons a day using the ferry. A proposal that the ferry should be abandoned was rejected by Parliament in 1960, when the ship canal companies presented a private bill seeking release from several statutory obligations imposed by previous acts. When the canal was constructed, it sliced across agricultural land, isolating 5 farms on the Thelwall side from their respective fields. The only changes to the ferry operation at Thelwall during its 100-year history are the fares, increased from a penny to 11 pence, also the permitted hours for ferrying, which used to be from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. during a 7-day week. Today's operational hours are Monday to Saturday, 7 till 9, 12 till 2, and 4 till 7. The ferry, used mostly during the summer, provides an easy route into Cheshire for walkers living in the Woolston and Martincroft districts. It cuts off a 6-mile journey. Passage across the canal, which is at the discretion of the ferryman, takes only a few minutes. Passengers, a maximum of 9, are sculled across with 1 oar in a small rowing boat. Mr. Derek Warburton, who has had the contract to operate the ferry since 1982, said, "The number of people using the ferry has dropped to only a couple a day, although it does see more use during the summer months when walkers and birdwatchers make use of the service."
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. 22, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Although there's no guarantee as to the future, it would take a decision by the House of Lords to bring an end to the Thelwall ferry. It's important to record history for the benefit of future generations. also to look back and remind ourselves of the way we were. These were the thoughts of two young men obsessed with the fascinating world of film. In 1936, George Kirkham and Percy Hughes decided to form a club which would be open to anyone with an interest in movie making. George for commercial reasons, as he ran a small business supplying cinefilm and equipment, and Percy as a keen amateur. In October of the same year, they founded Warrington Cine Society. Films as early as 1937 show how skillful they were as cameramen and producers of newsreels that would document many of the changes that were happening around Warrington. The Society's membership grew to 80 at its peak, holding weekly Monday night meetings. Their present headquarters has been the home of the Warrington filmmakers since 1964. There have been many memorable occasions during the past 60 years in which the self-motivated group have been involved. The royal visitors in 1938, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Air raid precautions training in 1939, just before the start of the war. The return visit of their Majesties after the war. All have been captured on film by the local movie makers. Until his death in 1961, George Formby had been the Cine Society's president, although he wasn't actively involved. Dramas, comedies and plays written and performed by its members can all be attributed to the history of the club. During the changing face of Warrington, records have been kept which document the town's history. The advent of photography in the 1850s has captured its landscape. And the foresight of a generation of local movie makers, the Warrington Cine Society, with their hand-cranked and clockwork cameras, has helped to immortalize life as it used to be. As we approach the millennium, it's inevitable that change will continue. Will the new Warrington Expressway and the Bridgefoot River crossing arrangement be enough to satisfy the growing traffic problems? Will the Thelwall Viaduct really last for 120 years? Will Warrington's road congestion ever be just a peep in the past?